Okay, this is an overview of my live setup, what I've got going on, how I use it. This is a setup for playing live techno, progressive house, that kind of thing, and doing it in a really improvised kind of way. So I'm going to talk through the equipment I use, how I'm trying to use it, and the kind of approach that I take as well. So just before I start getting into the detail of it, just to say what I'm trying to do here. So I've been making music for a long time and I wanted to be able to do something that I could take out and play live and be as spontaneous and improvisational as I can be when playing DJ sets. I've always enjoyed with a DJ set being able to take it in different directions, being able to kind of build things up and break them down. And so I decided the way I needed to do that was to have an improvised approach to playing this kind of music. So this system's really been put together to play this kind of improvised approach to techno music, where I don't have to write loads of songs or tracks. I don't have to prepare tons and tons, although I do have to practice lots, but I don't have to actually write out a whole set where I know where it's going or even write particular songs. I can really improvise and I can make things totally from scratch. So in terms of what have we got here in the setup, if you watched my previous video on this about a year ago, then you probably notice some differences, some of them small, some of them quite big. But basically what we've got here is the core of this system is this Eurorack Modular synth, which is making most of the sounds and the effects and stuff like that. It's got a bunch of synths in it, it's got a sampler, it's got effects, it's got a mixer. And that is being driven from this Torso T1 sequencer. So all of the musical kind of information is set up on here, and then it feeds into this system through MIDI and through a little bit of CV and gate as well. And then that runs out into this Mod Dwarf pedal, which is kind of an effects pedal, originally I think designed for guitarists, but it's pretty versatile. It's basically a computer running plugins in a guitar pedal, and you can plug it into your computer and set up all sorts of chains of effects and plugins. I largely use it as like an output at the end of everything, so my sound goes in there. It's got some compressors, limiting, EQ, stuff to sort of really sort out all of the levels and make it sound polished and sound as close as possible to a finished record, especially if you're going to be playing something alongside some DJs who are playing stuff that's like highly produced. You need to be loud enough and so on. So that's largely what that's doing. It does have a few like end of chain effects and things in it as well. That's the main role. So then that's like the core setup, which I take most of the time. I've really tried to keep things in a contained setup that I can really fit in just one or two bags and take around with me easily and doesn't take up too much space. But I do have a few little extra additions, which especially if I'm playing a longer set, I will add. One of them is this Roland S-1 synth, which is just an additional synth really, running that through MIDI. And the main reason I got that was to get another synth that could play polyphonically. Quite a lot of what's in here is monophonic, so it can only play one note at once on each line. It's good to have a bit of extra polyphony, so I'll have that if I'm doing a longer set. And then this one as well, I just couldn't resist getting hold of Forge TME Vhikk X, and I got that because I'd been focused for a long time on being able to play like full tracks with my modular system, lots of melodies and things like that, and I just wanted to inject some of the weirdness of a modular synth back into the whole system, and this thing is definitely really weird, but we'll get into that when I show you what each of the modules kind of does. So that's the overall setup, kind of Eurorack, sequenced by Torso, plus a couple of extras, and then a sort of mastering and output kind of finishing box. Okay, so what's this all doing then? Well, really a lot of stuff starts off with the sequencer. That's where I sort of set up the musical information, and I'll start off by looking at drums, because that's the sort of logical place I think to start off with things. So all my drum sounds are coming out of this Bitbox micro sampler. It has various slots on it, and one of them is a slot that you can use for like multi-sampled instruments. So there is a a slot on here that's got a drum kit, and all the drum sounds are mapped to, on the same MIDI channel, to different notes. You set all that up in the computer. A lot of it you can set up on here, but it's very finicky to set it up, so I can just set it up in the computer. There's pros and cons of having drums like that. It's a little bit limited in some ways because all the drums are in a sampler. I know some people like to use drum synths and, you know, have a lot more control over the sound, but it's one of those constraints I had to put in to have a system of this size, and it's for the type of music I make, I've prioritised the synth side. But all the drum samples are drum kits that I've made myself, some of them for records that I've released, some of them I've just made for the live set. So I've had all that control of the drums, and I don't need to worry too much about that. I can just load in different kits. So the drums run off the sequencer, and I keep promising to do a video in more depth of how I use the sequencer. I will at some point. Maybe I will even later today while I've got all the filming stuff set up and get it to you soon. For now, I'll just work really quickly on it. So there's a bunch, each of these is a channel on the sequencer. There's 16 channels on the sequencer, and I've set up the whole of the bottom row actually to be feeding to the same channel, which is driving all of the drums. So it's all drums across the bottom, and because of the kind of music I make, the kind of techno, it makes sense to have a different channel for each of the kind of drum sounds. So if I press play, I can press on this channel here. I can switch through the channels, but I can press on this one, and that's the kick drums. And the way the sequencer works is really cool. A lot of it works as like a Euclidean sequencer. So if I hold this down, it shows you what it's playing. And as you turn this knob, it adds in notes. So one click, it'll just add in one note. Two, it'll add in two, and it will evenly space those throughout the length of your sequence. And mine's currently 1 bar, so 2 notes evenly spaced like that. Sounds, you know, fairly straightforward. Now, if you turn it again, it puts in 3 notes, but it's going to change the spacing of them. This is what's called a Euclidean sequencer. It changes the space so that they're equally kind of spaced out. And if I turn another click, then you get the sort of standard 4/4 kind of kick drum. So you can set up sequences like that. You can hold it down and you can use it as a more standard step sequencer, adding things in and out. But it's obviously really quick to be able to play around with the pulses to get rhythms. So I've got a whole bunch of rhythms in here that I've put in already, but I can start from scratch. So, you know, let's say, let's actually just clear this one. And I didn't actually clear it, but here we go. So if I clear the pulses on this one, so as you heard, this has got a kind of an open hi-hat, so I can twist this, and I can get some different rhythms going on. Now what you can do as well is if you hold down Control, you can rotate. You can rotate that sequence. It's got the same number, but it's just shifting the start point around, which is quite cool. And then you can get into all sorts of different things. I can control the velocity, so I can use that for the volume, which is quite useful for getting different grooves. It's got like an accenting kind of thing, so you can get like grooves going in there with the just with the volume of the different notes. It's got random as well. Not sure it's too easy to hear with that rhythm, but you can add it so that it does random pulses every now and then, which is quite cool. And yeah, I've got all my different drum sounds set up there. So I've got an open hi-hat here. See, that's a bit quiet, so I can just turn it up with using the velocity. I've got a snare, clap. I can add more claps. Bring in less claps, bring in a ride cymbal. So there's quite a lot I can do with just muting and unmuting and then changing these things. We've got the sort of ride there. We've got a more kind of, I don't know if you can hear that, it's quite quiet, but more kind of percussion-y sound there. Yeah, so I can control the drums by muting and unmuting them, which is probably pretty standard stuff that people do. But it means I can have all sorts of things running, and I can really like bring things in and out and add a lot of variation and stuff. But then I can also go in and I can add in different patterns. Just really improvise around with them. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So in terms of percussion then, I've got those drums going in the sampler. I've also got some breakbeats usually. This sampler's got 8 different slots in it. And on this second one here, I could usually put in a breakbeat loop. Now it's good to have a bit of control of that, so I've wired up the stages. This channel of the stages is just providing a constant output that's wired in, so it's basically just acting as a fader. As you bring it down, it increases the voltage and opens up the low pass filter on that drum break. So this gives a bit of hands-on control. I do find with the sampler there's a lot of stuff is kind of a little bit hidden behind menus. If I want to turn that breakbeat up, I have to kind of go into here. So you do get quick with it, and you learn some of the button presses and stuff, but it's probably the least immediate thing that I've got in my rack, but in the space that it has, it lets me do quite a lot, so it's kind of worth it really. I've also got in here some different drum sounds I can just fire off by hand using the touch screen. Yeah, and I should add as well that it does time stretching, which is really cool. So if I slow this down, obviously that break starts kind of breaking up if you do it too much. But if you're generally playing around the same tempo, you can get away with changing the tempo, and it will time stretch. It's a little bit like a mini Ableton Live in some ways, this sampler, which is pretty cool. So let's just go back to something a bit simpler here. So yeah, that's the majority of what I've got going on with the sampler. Now just to come over to the sampler again to cover off other things, across the top I've also got some various kind of loops that I can bring in. So something that I found particularly great, I'll just need to turn this up on the mixer. I've got 3 channels here, all of which are controlling filters on things. If I open that filter up, I've got these kind of ambient synth loops. If I just turn that up a bit. Oh, I should do that on the mixer. So that's how the system's supposed to work. So yeah, I've got these ambient synth loops that I run in here. These are all things that I've made either with this synth, or a lot of them I make on the computer, especially using Vhikk, the Eurorack software. So I've pre-created quite a lot of stuff in there. I generally don't really use kind of melodies and stuff, it's more just like textures, but it's quite nice to have some long loops of textures like this just around the sort of the same chord or something. It just lets me add some really complex textures, which it would be quite hard for me to achieve with this equipment in a live, in a very live hands-on way. So I can bring them in, and I've just got like a library of these loops. They're all this kind of thing, pads, but with stuff shifting and changing and things, and just adding some interest. So that's the majority of the sampler. Then we can have a look at the FM synth. So if I just unmute that on the sequencer, and this is on the mixer as well, so I'll just need to turn it up. I'll just turn the hi-hats off so it's really clear, and we've just got the kick drum, and let's get rid of that break as well. So yeah, this is a kind of percussion module, but it's based on this really cool FM chip. You can tune it, change the kind of decay and stuff. And it kind of mostly does sort of, a kind of a tom type sound. I guess you can get into a little bit more of a white noise territory there as well, a little bit of a snare kind of thing. It does have a whole drum kit mode, but I don't really use that because I find it a little bit weirdly sort of tonal, and it's quite hard to make it fit in with things, not atonal enough. But yeah, you can get some quite cool things going with this one, and I can sequence it on the sequencer. And I've got the velocity on this set up to, by default it will just play this one way, but you can add like an emphasis through CV. So I've got the velocity of it set to add kind of a groove. I can bring it in and out. So there's your just really straight, no velocity changes. Well, yeah, if you make it really extreme and you tune it, you can get some really cool, almost like bass-like sounds or even lead sounds and that kind of thing. So that's really cool. It's nice to have some like hands-on drum stuff going on where you can really tweak with it and make cool noises and stuff like that. Now, moving on to this next one, we have the bass line. So I sequence this on here, same kind of way. You can see that's not really a Euclidean sequence, that's something I've sort of tapped in, but I can add more notes to it. I can take notes away and so on. So yeah, that's the bass synth. It's quite a simple kind of SH-101 style synth. It's got a sub oscillator, got an envelope built in, which is pretty meaty and pretty cool. A little bit of sound shaping options in there, but not too much. And it's just an analog synth, so it's really, really solid for bass. Now, something quite cool I've done is one channel of the sampler is running some CV, because this sampler can sample CV, and I've got that running through various modules, so I can invert it and run into the VCAs over here, which have various things running through them, and it can be used as a sidechain. So if you have a listen to the bass, let's open the filters, make it really obvious. Perhaps if I change the sequencer so it's just playing 16th notes, you can really hear that it's doing a sidechain. So I can get that sidechain on and off by muting and unmuting the sidechain channel in the sequencer. I found that's the best way to sort of do that for me. I do have a few switches up here so I can switch the sidechain in and out for various things. The main thing I use it on is the bass, but I do use it on that percussion as well. Just really helps, along with that accent velocity stuff, it just really helps to give it a bit of a groove. I'm going to pause on the sort of synths a little bit. We'll come back to the rest of the synths down here. Just want to talk now a little bit about the effects. So in my mixer here, I've got two aux sends. One of them, the first one, is sending to the FX aid over here, which is just set as a reverb. I've got various reverb algorithms in there. So if I turn that up on the percussion thing, you can hear the reverb. So I generally have a little bit of that on everything. I can change quite easily the size of it from such a huge thing to something a bit smaller. And sometimes I just use it as that kind of, as you use a reverb to give a bit of atmosphere and space to stuff. Sometimes I use it for really wild effects, but I do tend to just keep that as a reverb. Then on the second aux send, it's sending to a couple of places. Let's just bring this down and then I can explain it. So you turn up the aux send and it sends the signal out, and it gets split and sent to my kind of two processors. The first one is this Mimeophon delay. Then it has to come back on a single send, so I have to have a mixer here to sort of mix it all back together. So if I just turn up the delay here, let's just give a bit more high frequencies on that so you can hear it a bit more. So yeah, this Mimeophon's great. It's also got a kind of a reverb in it. Get some nice effects. You could hold the reverb, the delay, sorry. So, really useful effect for any kind of dance music. I love messing around with it on this. Great for those kind of sections where you want to kind of have a bit of a groove and just run along with, have that sound running along. I've now made it completely inaudible, which doesn't help very much. There we go, right, let's get that bit more audible again, bit of reverb. So that's the delay, I use that loads, but then I've also got this Monsoon processor which it gets sent to as well. So I just turn the delay right down and I turn this Monsoon up, and if I sort of bring the density of it up, I mean it sounds a little bit like a delay here, also got a reverb in it, but this does a whole load of other stuff. It's like a granular processor, so you can have like reverse things going on in it. One thing I just really love about this is the hold. When you hold something on this, it's a bit uncontrollable, but with this one, it just seems to work really nicely. And I've got a LFO over here, well, a sort of quad LFO that's clocked to the sequencer that is sending into, or I can change with these knobs, with this attenuators, how much it sends into the different controls on this. So you can see the LEDs changing along with the LFOs. Can change the speed of the LFO. You can get some really nice effects with that. You can also change the pitch of the grains in the granular synth. If it's not on loop, I'll turn the hold off. It's also got a feedback, which gets pretty crazy if you let it. So again, you can get really sound designy with that if you want to. You know, combine the two of them. And you can do some pretty crazy stuff really, which is fun. So yeah, that's a nice kind of way of getting into a really sound designy kind of groove-based sort of territory, and then we can go back to the synths and have a look at doing some stuff that's maybe a little bit more melodic. So I'm going to switch to the Plaits-based synth, which I've got labelled green here. I've got a pattern in here already, I think, on that. So we've got that on here. I'll put a little bit of reverb on it, a little bit of delay, and then we're not really hearing it because, well, filter mainly. So this is quite a good example of the sequencer actually. It's a sequence that's running. You can have it just on one note. I've got it set on here. I can actually change the note manually. But there's these algorithms in the sequencer which will create different kind of movements of the notes. I'll go into that in more detail, or if you really want to get into the torso, Mylar Melodies has an amazing video really going through how those algorithms kind of work and stuff. To begin with, they're a bit sort of they're quite kind of esoteric and they take a long time to get your head around, and you're not very incentivized at first to get your head around them because they come up with so many cool ideas when you just mess with them. But I have spent quite a bit of time and I keep revisiting different aspects of them so that I can get my head a bit more around what they're doing, so that I can use them in different ways. Happy accidents are great, but sometimes you want to get to a particular thing, and I've been particularly focusing on like having things as like different lengths and having different lengths of algorithms changing things. So sometimes just having something 1 bar or half a bar, and other times spread out over 8 bars. When you're playing, it's good to know what you're doing with that so that you can actually create the effect that you want. So yeah, this algorithm is obviously playing it as the single note as a kind of arpeggio, but we could put another note in it. And this is always when it gets fun, it doesn't actually do what you expect. That's just changing the note, isn't it? But if we change the range, you can make it come up with a bit more of a sequence rather than an arpeggio there, and so on. So sound-wise here, we've got the Plaits oscillator, which is great. Which it's a great oscillator for sort of lots of range of sounds. This is a sort of virtual analog one. I'm running it through this Wasp filter. Sometimes I use different filters, but I've been liking this one recently because it can do some really mad stuff and a little bit uncontrollable, but you get your head around where the sweet spots are on that. And it's nice to have a hands-on envelope for this. Really shape the sounds. So yeah, and one of the things I've found is that, like, if you leave anything playing like this, just doing the same thing over and over, it gets stale quite quickly. But if you can be, subtly changing the sounds at different times, especially if you've got a couple of things going, you can keep changing those, then it keeps things a lot more interesting. So yeah, that's the Plaits one. This next one, the noise engineering, Manus Iteritas, it's I use it in a very similar way to the one I've just shown you, really, except it's a self-contained voice. It's got its own kind of envelope, it's got a filter. It sounds very different to what you can get out of Plaits, especially when you get into some of the more sort of gnarly, distorted territory. I have to say, most people I see using this are using it for amazing but really noisy kind of really textural, a lot of distortion, kind of almost industrial stuff. And yeah, it's great for that, but it just sounds so lovely with melodies running through it. That's what I often end up using it for the most. So yeah, but it's good to have something that's versatile like this. You can have a really nice melodic part, and then you can really say you can really mess it up. Somehow, whenever I use it, I just end up coming up with really melodic stuff on it. Funny how different equipment kind of can do that. Different people get different things out of it. Anyway, so that's the other mono synth. So I'll have things playing off of that. Okay, on to the last synth now, which is the Polycinematic. So this is like a polyphonic, all-in-one kind of synth. It's got 8 voices. I run it through MIDI because I'm sequencing it on this. You can do some interesting stuff with control voltage and saving chords and stuff like that, and probably quite a lot abstract stuff than what I do with it. But yeah, I tend to use it for the kind of chord sequences. Sometimes I run a mono line through it for something. It's probably the least complex in a way, sound design wise, of the synths, but it doesn't really matter because it's playing the chords, which are usually the more kind of harmonic harmonically or maybe melodically complex things anyway, so it doesn't need to do so much. It's got a few different filters in it. It does this, a saw wave, a square wave, and an organ sound, which I thought was pretty bizarre when I first got it, but actually turns out to be quite useful as a kind of chord voice in a live set, and definitely takes you in a different direction than this stuff, and stands out as quite different to the rest of it as well, so that's pretty good. You can do all the big detuning kind of stuff, very Roland sounding to my ears. But yeah, other than sort of detune and filtering and sort of just different amounts of oscillators stacked, there's not loads that you can do sound design wise with that. So I added an effects aid here, an effects processor, multi-effects, to just get some more variations and things in there. So I could use, just have to turn it up a little bit when it runs through this for some reason. Unless you're on a distortion mode, which seems to just blow your head off, so you have to balance the levels a bit. But yeah, I've got a bit crusher, I've got this kind of real detune effect, another detuning effect there. There's this one, which is a very weird kind of grain processor, granular. There we go. Always takes me a bit of just fiddling with the knobs to actually get it to do anything in this mode. You can just kind of mangle your sequences, but it is like listening to the input and changing it. You can do some cool stuff with that. Got some like wah filters. And a kind of a chorus. And most of these are like emulations of kind of famous effects. I think this is supposed to be a Roland Dimension D. I have no idea how close it sounds, because although I did actually once get to touch one of those things, they're pretty rare. But yeah, it's all sort of interesting sounds that you can use to like mess things up and do something a bit more interesting with it. And then of course you can also bring in the main reverb on there. This does actually have its own reverb, which is pre this effect, so you can do some odd stuff with that. But you've got the reverb, and then you've got my multi-effects I was talking about before. So I got the delay, I've got the granular, turn it up. Lots of options for sound design, and yeah, getting different stuff going in there. So last of the synths, the Roland S-1. I don't think I've got any sequences on here, so let's have a look at how we do a polyphonic sequence. So I could put in, this is an A minor at the moment, so let's do a sort of put a chord in, three notes, and then we can put some pulses in. Okay, and then this sort of stuff happens all of the time. That it's like you do something like that sounds rubbish. Why does it sound terrible? Oh, okay, it's probably because there we go. It's playing in a really, really low octave. I had one of the algorithms running on that already, rather than just the chords. I could make it a shorter one, so that make it just one bar. That's nicer. bass down. Let's make it low bass. There we go. We could make the bass move around with that. How much was that moving around by? That? Okay. I've actually got it running over a longer period of time, but there you go. So, you know, just made up on the spot. I can just bring in different sequences. If I I'm going to go onto the Plaits channel now, and I'm going to clear all the sort of information on that. Let's just unmute it. Let's put some pulses in. So it's kind of ended up with a very similar rhythm. So if we rotate, that's the kind of thing actually it would be nice to have a slightly odd length. So, polyrhythm kind of thing. So I just shorten the length of that sort of bar or sequence. There we go. Plaits does so much. End up using the FM mode absolutely loads. And I've got some like LFOs running into the controls on that, so I can make it more interesting. I have never used a piece of equipment like this torso where you can improvise and be as melodic as this, which I really like because that's the kind of music that I'm sort of into. So it really inspires ideas, and I can try things out and really get into them. In fact, you know, I'm having to think all the time in the set, where am I going? Am I doing something euphoric, kind of melodic, or do I want to be doing something that's like much more percussive and and a bit more kind of hypnotic and stuff like that. Which takes me, let's bring that bass back in. Let's turn those things off. Let's just put the bass back in a sort of monotone kind of thing. Which brings me to the last sort of bit of equipment, well, second to last perhaps, that I haven't talked about. If I just turn it up, this is the Vhikk, which is, so in this case I've just got this and like an LFO just to modulate stuff a little bit, and this is just a really weird kind of wavetable synthesizer. It's got various different algorithms. Sometimes it's really quite uncontrollable. And just makes some really, whoa, there we go. All of the controls are labelled in really esoteric ways. Some of them just correspond to sort of quite easily understandable things. So this one in the middle is a DJ style filter, like low pass into high pass. But some of them don't, and some of them do different things depending on what algorithm you've got. So it really is a kind of very much feel your way, and that helps with the sort of improvisational side of this. It's a weird noise machine. It's got effects in it as well, which also have weird controls. And you can get some really interesting and weird kind of textural stuff. You can control it, sort of subdue it a little bit with the sidechain. Just to make it kind of fit in with the groove, perhaps a little bit more. Great for build-ups. It's kind of the obvious way to use it, but also just really nice for that kind of textural kind of stuff. You can, get some grooves going with it. And so you can quickly take stuff from like all that melody that we had before through to something that's like way more sort of, way more kind of groove based and weird. Get a break going with that maybe. It's just feeding back a little bit and just pull that back. It's hard when you're demoing this to not just like take it way too far. All of the controls kind of benefit from being used quite sparingly and carefully. But yeah, really interesting box for getting different atmospheres. And then, as I said before, we've got the end of chain stuff. A lot of the time I don't touch this. It's got the compression, the EQ, the limiting, mastering kind of stuff. I can record the set in this right at the end, which is really nice. But I do have like a high pass filter on the whole mix here. I rarely use it as extremely as that, but it's quite fun for bringing things out and dropping them back in again. And I also have a delay on it. Which is quite nice for build-ups and things like that. Very easy to overdo, I'm sure, that kind of thing, so I don't do too much, but it's a useful thing. This is great for just a bit of variation, bring the bass out, drop it back in, that old trick. So yeah, there you go. That's basically the kind of overview of the setup. Gives a lot of options, and I still don't think I've mastered all the sort of possibilities really. There's just tons of possibilities. All these modules have like, you know, different ways of using them. I think I tend to find I use them in quite extreme ways to begin with, and then you start to realise that if you're more subtle with them, things like the controls on Plaits, if you're subtle with them, you can get a lot more variations out of them and get different sounds. Probably the most interesting bit is that kind of intersection between the sort of more textural stuff and the melodic stuff. You know, you can just do stuff like, let's put that into a math, let's put that chord into a long delay and just bring it in and out. Bit of drama. What about the other chord? I'll quite often forget to do stuff, and then, you know, you turn a load of stuff off, you forget to turn another thing off, you just have to go with it. There's no previewing anything really in this system. I'm just listening to the master outputs, I'm hearing, you know, what I'm hearing, and yeah, sometimes you make mistakes, and then you just, the best thing I found is, you know, if you go, oh no, turn it off, then it sounds like a mistake. If you just sort of go with it and then add more things around that theme, you know, that's how improvisation often works, I think. So I hope that's been useful overview of how things work. Developed a bit since last time. There's loads of videos on my channel of me playing this on sets. There's quite a few like 1 hour sets of just improvising with this system. So do check those out. One thing I thought I might do is take one of the sets and do like a commentary of what I'm actually doing over it. Maybe I'll do a set with maybe more this kind of view so you can actually see what I'm doing. That said, I'm kind of contorting myself around the tripod here, so I'll have to find a better setup for for that. But that might be useful, I guess, the commentary kind of thing. I'm also, there's loads more I could say about every single section of this, you know, the effects or just the one synth and things. So yeah, I'm going to do some more videos going into that, like why I've chosen particular things, what I use them for, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of work to do all of that, and I'm not sure what people are going to be most into. So if you've listened through this and you found it useful, let me know in the comments what kind of things would be useful for me to talk it through. I will happily be guided by that. So yeah, just let me know, and keep an eye out on the channel for, you know, I'll be posting my practice sessions, live gigs that I've done, that kind of thing. I'll keep posting them and keep sharing, because I'm still learning all the time. I'm quite sort of happy with where I've got to. I feel like I can do, you know, hour-long sets that I'm really happy with and are sort of often completely improvised. But I always listen back to them and find things that I would change or things that I could do more of, and play with the equipment, find different things it can do, come up with ideas. So it's developing all of the time. So yeah, thanks for listening to this if you've made it this far all the way through, and let me know what you'd like to hear more of.